Hello, welcome to my diary. I'm Tatami. Here I talk about whatever I want to, and one of the things I definitely talk about here is transracial adoption, especially by white people, especially because it often seems to be for suspect reasons. Reasons like penance for their God, for looking good in the community, so they can get kudos at church, so they can get stopped by strangers in the store, and sometimes, a lot of times, people adopt just so that they will not seem racist to the outside world, just so that they will seem like a good person, not prejudiced. Uh, they are the future. And they can weaponize and wield this child against other people, against people who are calling them out again about bad behavior, against people who are asking for, progress with rights for people of color. So, was it yesterday or the day before that? A man named Matt Gaetz, who I believe is a Florida representative. Yes, they were on the floor arguing, and I'm not sure who is the black man who he was arguing with on the floor. I am not sure, y'all. I don't typically uh, look too hard into all these people's names. But he had a secret son apparently this whole time. A black man is asking for Black Lives Matter rights. And we have here Matt Gaetz is somehow has been raising this immigrant child from Cuba for the last 6 years. For the last 6 years, keep in mind this child was 15 years old when he adopted him. So he adopted a child in secret, and he finally found his moment to reveal to the world that he had a Cuban child by pretending that the child was black for hypothetical purposes. Essentially, he starts interrupting a very passionate plea. Let me see if I'm able to find who. Oh, here we have it. Democratic Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana. Cedric is out here making a plea. He's like, for the black community, these far off issues aren't the issue. The issue is that we're dying and we're being over policed in our communities, or disproportionately sent to jail, disproportionately over sentenced. And Matt Gaetz raises his hand and he's like, how do you know? None of us has a black child. I'm like, okay, well, first off, Matt, if you had a child with a black woman, and okay, sure, you had a child with a black woman, or are you saying you adopted a child? I was very confused. I'm like, if so, you have a mixed black child, and you're here interrupting for this child's rights, or you adopted a black child, and you're here interrupting about this child's rights. But no, because it offends his honor. He had to make it about him. He was somehow the victim of any insinuation around him that he did not care personally for black people, because here he has one in his house eating up his food. That's the only reason I could think of for someone to interrupt right there, is to be like, no, but I gave everything to this child. I spend $3,600 a month on this child. I spend this much, and if I divide how much their room costs and how much the electricity has gone up since they've come in, that's what it sounds like. But he didn't even have a black child, did he? That was all hypothetical, because he adopted a teenage Cuban who could pass for white in most settings, in many types of light, a very light-skinned Cuban who would never, under any circumstances, be confused for a black person in his entire life. But Matt felt vindicated in that moment, like he had something. He really had something. He was going to derail a conversation, a very serious conversation about the rights of black people and the needs of black people and the reformations of poor people, people who need something. And he was going to center himself as the victim and as somebody who had given his all to people of color. Don't you see, I adopted one of you and took care of it for 6 years. That's what this sounded like, but it's not totally abnormal, because I've seen this type of behavior from white adoptive parents before, where they wield and weaponize their child of color against well-meaning people nearby who are maybe concerned, who have questions, who want answers, is concerned about what you're doing. Maybe they're not just random people. Maybe they're people who actually know you and have concerns. But people don't ever want to hear that they're not perfect. They're not someone who never falls for their prejudices. They're not somebody who never falls for the okie doke. He wanted to hear that he was perfect, he was the savior, and further, he didn't really want to hear that, right? Because he wasn't really serious about any of it. It was about derailing this whole situation. So in essence, what we have with Matt is he's the next level. He's not only derailing because he wants to be the victim, he's also derailing because he doesn't want people of color to have these full rights. He managed to adopt somebody who's so close to being not a person of color that they're barely a person of color. They're literally, they tan well, maybe, is what he's looking like in this picture. So he barely adopted a person of color just so he could derail the rights of people of color. And somehow these people still keep able to adopt. These right-wing Christian types who absolutely have the worst intentions in mind when it comes to children. And sometimes it's as simple as weaponizing the children around town, but sometimes it's as crazy as weaponizing them on national television, so that you can try and make points and waste time and interrupt people who are making valid points. And like, sorry, what was his name? I can't even remember. Cedric Richmond, like he was saying, he was like, this is telling me you don't care. And then, of course, Matt went into his super fake outrage, like, oh, who are you to say I don't care about my son? Who are you to say I don't care about my son? But it's like, but if you cared about your son, why are you here interrupting something that will absolutely benefit him? Let's say you do have a little dark-skinned black boy who you call your son. Why would you be here interrupting about this? It would seem that Cedric cares more. It would seem that anybody else speaking for this child would care more than you care because you are here interrupting and making some situation about you. And I think that this is a lesson that all white adoptive parents can take, because they often, even in a smaller situation where it's not, the politics of America, where it's just a class that your child is taking that has to do with their culture, you take offense to something the teacher said. You want it to be about you. You have centered yourself, so you're like, but aren't I having my kid here? So who are you to say all white people this or this, that, and the third, or who are you to teach my child? But just like your child already knows, it's not the whole entire 100%. Your child just is understanding the history. Your child is learning the culture. Your child is learning something that does not center you. And that is okay. And it's really scary to think about all of these people with these ill intentions who are legitimately in positions of power around at the local level or all the way at the federal level, who are absolutely just attempting to derail, and they're willing to use young lives of color to do it. Young people from other communities. And of course, you have to say thank you. If you're the little boy from Cuba, the young teen from Cuba, how else are you going to get to America? You found your in. And so you're always going to be chill, cool, let him say what he needs to say, let him do what he needs to do. Sometimes you'll have to say some nice things on his behalf because he'll get you in hot water. But you always have to say thank you, because if you ever admit that some of this is bunk, you're the one in trouble. You're the ungrateful asshole. Even though you're, fully aware you're the one who's cut off. Oh, I wasn't the perfect adoptive parent. You get the fuck out. I'm never talking to you again. How dare you ever say anything? How dare you want to talk to me about what I did? I did my best, and you're part of the reason why my life was ruined. That's the type of attitude that people who are adopted get, especially people of color adopted from other countries. There's a total lack of power, and there's, already is this huge power imbalance between parents and children, obviously. And some of it is well necessary, but some of it is disgusting and scary and rooted in racism and classism. And that's what we saw here with this Matt Gaetz situation. And I hope somebody out there learned something. I hope somebody out there was embarrassed, read an article, saw a think piece, something that opened their eyes to perhaps behavior that they're doing on a micro level of that, a smaller level of that, around town or around the school or around wherever, that is putting their child into a box and weaponizing their child and using them as, something for them, to benefit them at all times, make them seem a certain way. I mean, that's not your child's job. Your child should never have that kind of burden on their shoulders, should never have to be put in all sorts of articles to with you like, oh no, actually I did adopt this kid, and now I'm weaponizing them against progress that could absolutely benefit them at the end of the day. Like, there's no way, if he's really a man of color, he can sign up for a lot of the same things that civil rights that black people fought for, that applies to him too. So it's just crazy to me that somebody would adopt, but for this reason, to weaponize, to hold Black people and people of color back. But at the same time, it's not like shocking. And like, I never thought it would happen. Of course, it's disgusting, but I've seen this type of behavior before at smaller levels, and this is just kind of like the culmination of that type of behavior. Of course, people in power were going to start doing this type of shit. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads.